Huh. Hope this is the right place.
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh,
how's it going? Good to see you.
Do you know how to get in? I think
Right. Hold on. They gave me a password.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is right?
Yeah. Tasteless gave it to me, yeah.
Okay, all right. VALORANT Champions Tour Last Chance Qualifier Pacific 2023. Are you sure?
Hey, sorry,
what's up, dude?
You guys didn't go in yet?
Well, we can't. This password that we got from Tasteless, I think, isn't working out.
Oh. No, they update the password every act, so this one's out of...
Oh.
I heckin' love tens.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. All right.
Let's go.
All right.
Oh,
All right.
neat little place.
Yeah.
Interesting spot.
I'm pretty sure this is where CGRS was preparing for
Oh, is this
Masters.
a
This is
little
his jail.
dungeon?
Yeah, the dungeon where he's preparing.
The little time chamber that he escaped from and carried paper X?
Yeah, Alex stuck him in here and he couldn't get out. Yeah.
I mean, Masters was crazy. But it is time, obviously, Tokyo just finished, and we gotta wrap things back to Pacific. Obviously, we had a great year, and I mean, Paper X getting third at Tokyo helps, right? Kind of put that little cherry on top. First of all, before we go through all the teams, we have to remember what this is for, right? So this is for the VCT Last Chance Qualifiers Pacific 2023, and we do have a bit of an interesting format because there's only 7 teams. To summarize, basically what's happening is seed 10 through 6, they will have to go through a single elimination gauntlet style in the beginning, but then seeds 4 and 5, thanks to their performance, they will already have a bye into the double elimination section of this tournament at Last Chance Qualifier. But at the end of the day, it's all for that one spot to move on to Champions.
So if you are one of those teams that had that rough start or, that wasn't able to pick up any wins, this is truly your last chance.
Let's talk about that team. What were some of the strengths that we were able to kind of pick out during the regular season?
I mean, for DFM, we saw some very big strengths in the likes of Anthem, who came into the squad and came into the season. We're like, okay, how is he going to perform? And I think that he was kind of one of their top performers. One of the big things that I'm curious to see, again, goes back to what does this starting lineup look like? Because this has been a team that has been tooling around with a lot of different things. Initially, we weren't seeing Soldam at all. Suddenly, we're seeing Soldam in. Then it was going to be Suggest out. Then it's Rada out, etc. With the time that they have they settled on a core 5 that will finally be able to get them that win and get them, into that next matchup in the LCQ to have that hope, that dream run to make it over to Champions? Because if they could pull that off, then I think it's the storyline of the year. I think that would absolutely supersede CTRS helping to get Paper X into 3rd place at Tokyo. I think that would just take the spotlight globally.
And players like Takajay and others really stepping up as well. We saw glimpses from them of brilliance. Takajay and that Viper at times looked really, really good, but we need more from DFM.
Who do you think is kind of the main foundation for this team? If you had to pick one player that maybe you really should rely on as a core, maybe it's just because of the position they play, maybe it's the style they play.
I mean, I guess Takajay's been kind of a solid controller. I always looked at him as like this guy who's a lot of times has been talked about as a cracked aimer. He's the guy that has some of the best mechanics in the region. I'm looking to him to kind of step it up and have good performances on that back line for DFM.
I know you had mentioned Anthem obviously on the scoreboard, looks pretty strong. Is that kind of who you would be looking at?
I think so, just given that he is the IGL, he is the one who's trying to make these shot calls, and I think that if he's able to clean up in that regard and be able to really guide the team, we already know that he can just put bullets through people's skulls. We also know that he can have some nice calls, but if he can make that a bit more consistent, then perhaps that's going to be good enough for them to be able to finally get those wins.
Let's talk about another team that actually didn't show that much promise in the beginning and really was a late bloomer, so to speak, Talon.
Yeah, I mean, Talon was having a tough time in some ways similar to DFM, where they're trying to figure out who's playing what roles, trying to get Pat reintegrated into the roster, trying to situate themselves in terms of who's IGLing, who's doing all the various things for the team that need to be done. And yes, eventually they did find that, but it was kind of too little too late.
We saw Pat playing pretty much as many roles as RB has played throughout the season. At the beginning, they were really trying to figure out what do we integrate him on. And then at the end, it just kind of came to the same conclusion that I think all the fans were hoping for, which was Pat playing Duelist. We got to see him playing the Raze, a couple rounds on the Jet as well. And it looked excellent. And I can't help but wonder, had they just done that from the start, maybe he didn't have his confidence back because he recently had his wrist surgery and whatnot, but Maybe.
Like you guys mentioned, once they started to figure out roles and things like that, we saw that Talon was still a team that understood their own color, right? Their own style of aggression, their own style of set plays, a little different than the DRX or the Paper Rexes that we already have in Pacific. But they kind of like to take a lot of these high-risk, high-reward kind of all-in style of plays. And, you know, when you have players like Pat or Garnett, it works out. Now, let's talk about specific kind of players that you think really stand out. I mean, I guess we're all talking about Pat. He's always been the superstar. Do you think, though, that that is the center of this team?
Jit boys.
Ooh, I like that you brought this up.
Or if Sushi's back in, I'm also fine with Sushi. But
one of the boys.
One of the boys. One of the boys. I think that his utility timings are absolutely top notch, as well as his fragging. And when we are in this very aggressive mid-round pivot-centric meta where you have to be able to react on the fly, having somebody who's got great util lineups that has great timings is absolutely paramount. So I think that Jit Boys is going to be one of the most valuable people on this team.
So I'd really like to talk about a team that I think we're all really impressed with, that really just kept getting better and better and better throughout the year, to the point where we thought maybe they'd be one of the teams going to Masters, and that's RRQ.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was racking my brain too. I was like, what is it? Global Esports, RRQ, Team Secret? Like,
but I think RRQ probably one of the best of the bunch in terms of like improvements throughout the year, what we saw with them. I was really excited to see them just get so much better towards the end.
Going into lock-in, didn't have a strong showing. Elox says, okay, you know what? We didn't play like we normally do when we're scrimming. And everyone goes like, yeah. You always look better in scrims, whatever. But then they showed how they do actually look in scrims. The performances that we were seeing from everybody on that team, but Xfaro in particular, just stunning to see.
What impresses me the most is the improvements weren't actually off the back of one player. Sure, Xfaro's fragging out all the time, but the wins they got weren't always because of Xfaro, it was because of the team. And to me, that's like, okay, so you have someone to fall back on, but overall you're finding your own style, you're getting your own interpretations out there on the map, in the server, and making it work. I think this team really has come together and finished the entire puzzle for that project that they've also had, right, of kind of combining two different regions together and proving themselves. And they were just so close to making it to playoffs and maybe even going to Masters Tokyo, that I would love for them to take this last chance, literally, to be able to make it to an international stage and kind of redeem themselves from lock-in, where everyone said, okay, this is by far the worst team in Pacific.
I already kind of teased them up here as we're getting to talk about RRQ. So of course, like, I want to go on to talk about global esports. Let's just take all of these players from different regions. Let's just take 5 duelists and see what the hell we can mold out of them, and then see what happens. And I think that overall, even though they didn't make it in the playoffs, it was a pretty big success.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, a lot of people questioned the comms language, right? And the role situation, like you said. And then on top of that, like the coaching and IGLing, is it gonna mesh well? You have so many different styles from different regions. But quite frankly, I mean, the coaching staff and then Aaron as the IGL, they've really figured out a way how to handle this entire squad.
The player that I want to discuss for this team, which I think has to be SK Rossi, as much as I would love to say, oh, it's Aaron for his calling, because, you know, he's always been good on the defense, but we're seeing him trend up on the attack. I think it has to be kind of centered around SK Rossi, because when he is fired up, when he is right there playing alongside the likes of Texture, Bazzi, etc., who've been fragging out of control, the team does look unstoppable. They look like world beaters. We're nearly able to take down DRX towards the beginning of the season. But I can only hope that with the downtime, they've been able to work with Rossi to make sure that he does feel more comfortable, that he is willing to make for more calls, to go for more aggressive and selfish plays that are backed up by the rest of his squad. Because if that is the case, then I think Global absolutely a contender to be able to make it over to champs.
Yeah, and I think the follow-up for me, I think the obvious person would be Munyet. How nuts he was throughout the year, right? I mean, just absolutely phenomenal throughout the year. There's no other word to describe the way he played. They literally gave him the nickname on the team, Demon Yet, right? The Demon Munyet, and he's just like so good. But the player I actually am really curious about is Bazzi, because if this is initiator meta, he's got to be the guy. We saw some great performances towards the end of the year from him. I think he needs to be the guy that's reacting to SK Rossi when SK Rossi calls for plays.
Okay, the next team we got to talk about is, again, one of the Japanese teams. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see either of them at Masters Tokyo. However, there's still a lot of hope for kind of the team that always represented Japan, which is ZETA Division. And I just want to add, Chamber got buffed, so it's looking like it's a bright spot here for ZETA Division and Laz if he goes back on the Chamber.
I mean, that, and we also did see some moderate success from Chamber at Masters Tokyo, particularly coming down to that final. We saw on Bind, EG coming out with a Reina Chamber composition.
Yeah, wonky.
A bit bizarre for sure, but we were seeing some decent value found from the Chamber, but we'll have to just wait and see. I think that if he can get back onto a pick like that, that could be a big boon for them. But at the same time, he was also looking a lot better and more comfortable on Initiator by the end of the season. I think it would be a nice little little cherry on top at the end of the season if we can get to see them in front of the champs crowd.
You got to give Laz the opportunity to do what he does best, and that's frag out. And he is their best player. I mean, when he's on, as good as Depp is on the jet, you know, on the duelist role, Laz is the superstar. Laz was the guy that was getting them over the line last year at Reykjavik. So you got to put Laz in positions where he can utilize his natural gifts that he has.
I actually want to focus on a different player for that exact reason, is Depp, right? When he frags out, I mean, he is at the top of the board. I mean, he was topping a lot of the different stats during Pacific as well. And because of that, a lot of other competitors and coaches I've heard has also kind of picked him as potential MVP, right? If you had to pick one player from another team, like Depp's that guy, like he's the guy on ZETA Division. So if he gets on a hot start, right, on that jet, and he's able to frag out, maybe even with the operator, which he was so good with towards the later half of the season, again, maybe that's the start of kind of this fairy tale run all the way into champions. Next, probably your favorite team to always talk about in Pacific, right? Let's get that through.
You don't even need to tell me. It's team secret, baby. Let's go. I'm really excited about this team as usual because they're a really solid team. The fundamentals are really good. Warburg talked about this when we interviewed him at the beginning of the year. The thing that he really focused on when he came to the team was their fundamentals, just making sure that their protocols are in place, their communication is good, all of these things that he had to sit down and really kind of go back to basics with the team to get them, you know, in a modern phase of Valorant. That should be accomplished, right? We should be there. We should be good. We saw it against DRX. They should be ready to go. So now it's just a matter of finding those new levels of protocols, awareness, reactions, understanding of the game, understanding of their opponents. And I think we will.
Now, let's talk about the key players here because Envy's been popping up nonstop. And I think both in terms of the player who has to perform and has continued to perform, we got to focus on Envy, right? We've been talking about Initiator meta. He's playing that Initiator. He's been one of the hottest fraggers that this team has had. And he's one of the younger talents that is gaining this confidence. If he can continue that streak, start off strong, set up his teammates while fragging out, I mean, that's the entire package that you could hope for.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. But I disagree with you. Because the person that I want to see, again, talking about initiators, is Jesse Bash. Are you going to play something other than Sova? Because
now you can play on a Fracture.
Yeah. Okay.
We're good. We've done it.
I'm fine with that. Calm has shown us that Sova on Fracture, good. But even Calm does not play it on maps like Lotus. Yes, they've had some good trap plays in the past, but they either need to invent so many more trap plays on Lotus, or they need to just get him shifted over onto a different pick because teams will have been able to study every single setup that they go for on that map by now. So do you innovate or do you just put him on something that's a bit more stock standard that he can still thrive on? That's what I'm going to be curious to see.
All right.
This is the last team. It's Gen G.
Okay.
I like Gen G. I love the players on this team, but just pull at my heartstrings at every twist and turn throughout this season because it's this hot start. We're like, okay, Gen G, the performance at Lock-In versus Loud. Gen G's looking like the #2 team here in the region. And then again, they still just kind of stumbled at the end. So I have a mixed relationship with Gen G. I am hoping that they show us the team that kicked off this season.
So the player that I'm really keen about for them coming into the LCQ is TS.
You just can't get away from TS, right? Team Secret.
Team Secret, yeah, that's it. Look, I think for TS, like, he had a really good start to the year when the whole team was playing well. It seemed like everything was going great. He was playing great. He's calling great games. The comms were good. And as soon as they lost that one match, just everything fell apart, you know, and that can't happen again. So that has to be on him, not only as the IGL, but as like the leader. He's the oldest player on the team. And also I'd like to see him be back on like the Brimstone on Fracture and things like that because his Brimstone is really, really good on that map. So I need to see Gen G be willing to kind of go with, you know, what was working. Because I don't know, that Fracture change-up that they had didn't really.
How about TS back on Sova? How about TS back on Initiator and then Sylvan?
You were just telling us we don't need to see so much Sova earlier.
Okay. If it's TS on Sova, I'm more than happy. Because we've seen so much Sova from Jesse Bash and I've seen none of it from TS.
I think what we're all agreeing on is clearly a very good team, really good fundamentals, good calling when it's working out, but we need to see changes.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to see changes to the composition, changes to the ideas of Valorant basically here for Gen G. So we talked about all the teams, and of course, as is tradition here on VCT Pacific, we gotta make our predictions. And here's the thing, we've seen the potential and we've seen kind of the 2% that they're missing, right?
Fine.
So which team brushes up?
I'm going ZETA. I'm going ZETA Division. I just feel like maybe they'll start playing Chamber, Labs will start fragging out again, 10 will be back to normal, Depth's just a monster. That's my logic.
I would love to see Global because I think that they had such a strong run back. I love that Aaron really started getting a lot stronger on the attacking side of calling, and I think that with them kind of figuring out the starting roster by the end of the season, I think they can absolutely get it done.
Yeah, this whole time I'm like listening, I was actually kind of hoping that
Thinking
you would.
desperately.
Well, no, because I have a team that I want to predict, but this team has claimed that I have cursed them every time I have predicted them, which is. You guys, which is RRQ, right?
Yeah.
And now that I've put it out there, I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't be upset with either of your choices. I think that honestly,
Yeah.
no matter
No,
which
it's
team
so
ends up
hard.
making it, I think that there's going to be a lot of potential there for them to find some upsets over champs.
Well, that's all the 7 teams that will be playing here at Last Chance Qualifier Pacific. Don't forget to tune in on July 18th. It goes all the way through the 23rd. So 1 full week of action to determine who will be the last team from Pacific joining the rest over at VCT Champions in LA.
I wish I was first.
You gotta go for your boomer bros, man.
I mean, but I can't pass up on Munyet. I mean, it's just
you
he's-
could.
No, but you absolutely can.